Hey, Fike Nation, Tom Burton, your superintendent here. We're so excited to welcome into the class of 2020, even though I know it's 2021. But, we had this thing called COVID that we're still dealing with. So class of 2020 offer these great distinguished alums, none greater than Anna Dickson. Anna, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here and really, really excited to talk to you more. And this is awesome. Awesome honor. Super excited. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, you're welcome. Hey, so Princeton City Schools, Princeton High School, once a Viking, always a Viking. Talk a little bit about your experience in Vike Nation.
Yeah, my mom taught at Princeton, so I had a real connection to the entire school system, all the way up from elementary school all the way through high school. Knew many of the teachers, whether I had them for class or not, and had incredible friends that I met from elementary school. I went to Springdale, and then I went to Rellis, Princeton Junior High, and all the way up to Princeton High School. So I was in the school system my entire career pre-college, and it was just an absolute incredible time. It was great. Had tons of great experiences, did theater, played soccer for years. It was just awesome. It was very, very cool.
Let's talk about some teachers. How about a teacher or two that you can look back and just say they were so influential? Many. Okay. Well, fire away. Yeah. Go ahead and talk about a few.
Sure. I think some of the teachers that had a huge influence on me, Ms. Breitenstein, who was the photography teacher, and is really where I found my love for photography and sort of grew into that being the career I wanted to pursue. And then Mr. Bucco, who sort of threw me off that course when I took anatomy and physiology, which I thought I almost dropped out of because I was so afraid I wasn't going to like it. And I was going to be a little nervous about actually doing the dissecting and things like that. And turned out I loved it so much so I almost changed my major when I got to Ohio State. And I just thought his teaching style for me worked really, really well. And it was just everything being on the board and really having to pay attention and soak things in. That was absolutely phenomenal. Oh God, there's so many great teachers. Mr. Woodrow was a great teacher. Miss Austin was a great teacher. I loved science classes. And I mean, not that I'm biased, but Ms. Dickson, Ms. D, who was my mother and my teacher for many years, and very hard on me as my teacher. I think she felt she was like, got to be harder on Anna because it can't show favoritism in a good way. But had a lot of fun in her classes as well. It's definitely tough. There were so many great teachers at Princeton.
That's amazing. And it's fascinating that you found your love for what you're currently doing. So let's talk a little bit about post Princeton. So I know you mentioned Ohio State, but can you kind of give us some background of what you did after Princeton?
Yeah, totally. So I went to Ohio State for a couple of years, and I went the undecided track, and again, I thought maybe I would do something with science or medicine, but there was always that love of photography there. But I knew it was sort of a hard road to pursue. And finally, after my sophomore year, I decided to transfer to an art school, to Columbus College of Art and Design, and really give it my all and focus on doing photography. I was going to have to wake up every day. Once I was done with school, I would have to wake up every day and do something for the rest of my life. And that something should be something that I love to do. So I decided to go to art school and pursue photography. So I went to CCAD for, I guess, 3 to 4 years, 3.5 years probably, and then graduated with a Bachelor of Fine Arts. And after that, moved to New York to pursue my career, not in photography, but in photo editing. And I actually had taken a couple internships when I was at CCAD, and the one that made me fall in love with photo editing was at America Online, which I know still around. It was the end of the Netscape days. I'm sure that anybody who's in school right now watching this is probably like, what is Netscape?
What's
or
American
AOL.
Online?
What's America Online? But that was my first interview, and it opened up a whole new world for me, of photography that I did not know about, which was cool.
Can you talk about a little bit the here and now, what it is that you're
Yeah.
doing?
Yeah. Yes, I could try. It's always so hard to explain what I do now. So, although I went to school for photography, my career sort of took a great trajectory towards sort of the digital world and the changing landscape of media and photography. So, I've been at Google almost exactly 6 years, and I've become much more of like a product manager where I work with teams who need images in their products. And I work on a product that brings images in from various sources. There's a lot of licensors out there like Getty Images, Shutterstock, Adobe, and
Mhm.
hundreds of others. And we bring content in from there and deliver that to our product teams. That's a large part of what I do, which is sounds fairly simple, but when you work at a company that's trying to represent everything in the entire world, that becomes much more complicated. So understanding where we're lacking content, making sure we have great content and the right content. And I think as the world progresses and becomes a more visual place, and our products become more visual, if you go back and look at Google, even 5 years ago, I think you'll see that beyond image search or the images tab, a lot of Google previously did not have a lot of heavily visual content. And that's changing with Instagram and TikTok and Twitter and all of these other very, very visual platforms, Pinterest. We're understanding that visuals are a form of communication that people are using. It's a form of not just entertainment, but information. And how do we develop our products to encompass that more holistically and provide that kind of information to users globally? So one example of what we did, we recently brought in images for the Olympics. So anytime you would look up anything on the Olympics on Google search, you would see a carousel of photos of what was happening essentially in real time. And that kind of stuff comes from our team. So it's a lot of fun. And
Yeah.
it's pretty cool to think about how do we do that for everything in the world. It's hard. It's very hard, but very, very exciting. And it seems like a departure from photography, but in my mind, it really isn't. I think there's a specific type of skill set that you have to understand the nature of visuals that can be translated in different ways, but it's just a different way of thinking about it.
Can you talk a little bit about, let's kind of unpack this whole career that you've had about, so you're on this path, and we talked with Dave Dyer about kind of what he was doing. And he talked about like, look, you have a plan A. If you have a plan B as well, you may default to plan B when plan A becomes too hard, right?
Yeah.
So he talked about this concept of he always wanted to be a musician, but he wanted to be in music, much more so music. So this is such a great parallel because you talked about being a photographer, but yet you're not necessarily doing that. But there's all these skills that you learned, right? Being a photographer that you probably use each and every day. Can you unpack that a little bit for us?
Funny because Dave Dyer and I actually crossed paths in our career. I worked at iHeart Radio and crossed paths with him at some point in time, and saw that he was also a part of the Distinguished Alumni and sent him a message and was like, "Congrats! I haven't talked to you in a few years," which was so cool to see that. So yeah, it's super nice, but it's the same in a different sort of medium. It's funny. I knew that I wanted to move to New York. That was a big since 8 years old. I wanted to move to New York, and that's what I was going to do. And with photography and photo editing, I went into photo editing in 2004, and the recession happened in 2008. I was working at Rolling Stone, and magazines really started folding. And I just thought I was going to move to New York, work at magazines somehow, which I was able to get my foot in the door there. But then as magazines started to fold and the industry got harder, I was fortunate enough to have some online experience, but that experience was really, really different. And I just sort of took a different job back online at iHeartRadio, which was up and coming in digital. But all of those places needed to have websites, and those websites needed to have imagery, and that just similarly fit in with what I was doing in the magazine world. So it made a lot of sense, a little less shooting. But, the photo industry has gone through some absolutely major changes. And I've watched a lot of people in the photo industry struggle with those changes. And I've had a lot of people ask me, where do you see yourself? This question I think is so funny. Where do you see yourself in 5 years or 10 years? I have no idea. I have no idea. I had no idea 10 years ago where I was going to be. I could not have possibly told you that I would end up at Google. I certainly had no idea that the magazine industry was going to go through that many changes, that the internet is going to change so drastically. And I think we're in a time period where it's less about plan A, plan B, plan C, for me at least, and that it's more about being open to opportunities and seeing beyond the path that you think something is and is created for. I don't think that, there are so many jobs out there that you don't go to school for, that you don't know even exist until you get out there into the real world and start doing them. Nobody taught me about photo editing. I had to go take an internship that taught me about photo editing, and then go sit in a cafe when I moved to New York and look at the front of magazines at mastheads at the jobs that existed to figure out who to contact to go talk to see if it was something I wanted to do. But I don't know that there's just like a set path for anybody. I think you have to have an idea of what you want to do and what you want to pursue, and be open to taking the thing that you learned and transitioning it into a world that, like Dave said, that isn't explicitly being a photographer or isn't explicitly being a musician, but you get to be surrounded by that world and be a part of that world in a meaningful way. And to me, that's very much what it's about. I also frankly thought that there were a lot of people who were way better photographers than me, and I wanted to give them, I'd rather spend my time giving them an opportunity to have their voice be heard than fighting amongst them to have my voice be heard. So that's sort of the position that I've taken. And now I see my role as in the photography industry explicitly as like trying to help people through the changes that are occurring and show them that there are more opportunities out there than just that one thing they think they do. Because I think people are much, much more than a single thing that they think they do.
Yeah, we try each and every day to instill in our students. So it's such a fascinating career, and you're doing so many wonderful things now. So were there some teachers back when you're like, they know so much, but they're breaking it down to me so I understand?
Yeah, part of when I talked about Buco's class, for me, that was really, really important. I know he would put the notes on the board and he was like, do not write like while I'm explaining this, like these are here, you like learn this, absorb it, write it, you need to write it, but then we're going to really think through it and talk through it. I also Miss Kinney at Relish, huge impact on me. I kept in touch with her for years and years and years. She really had a way of teaching. It was all about critical thinking. I like thinking about it as like structured thinking and creative thinking, and like thinking through things in those two ways. And I think that both of them, when you can marry both of those things together, then you get sort of a way of critically thinking about problems and breaking them down into a variety of different pieces and solving them. The logic puzzles that I used to do in like Miss Kinney's class, and Miss Kinney and Buco, I think, are two of the teachers that had me think about things a little bit differently that I can remember. Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. This has been absolutely amazing. I'm so looking forward to meeting you in person. Of course, as always, go Vikings.